The fluid responsiveness testing is an important concept. The Surviving Sepsis campaign has adopted this concept and suggests that the fluid responsiveness is very important to guide the administration of fluid. Now, what if you do not want to test for fluid responsiveness and administer fluid while looking at the static marker, for example, central venous pressure? Then in that case, what will happen? Only half of the patient will be fluid responder, means that they will get benefit of the fluid, but half of the patient, there won't be any benefit. So remember, the central venous pressure and PAOP, that is pulmonary artery occlusion pressure, these two are most commonly used marker of right and left cardiac ventricular preload respectively. It is now well admitted that both variables cannot reliably predict the fluid responsiveness. Now, how to test whether the patient is fluid responsive or not? Well, to detect the preload dependence and predict the fluid responsiveness, several tests and indices have been developed over the past 20 years. Conceptually, two types of tests are described. The traditional fluid-based test, where you give a fluid challenge and then observe the rise in stroke volume. This fluid challenge method has been used de facto for many years. The classic fluid challenge consists of the administration of 300 to 500 ml of fluid over 30 minutes. The most obvious limitation of this fluid challenge is that it is not a test but the treatment itself. In the event of fluid unresponsiveness, it is impossible to withdraw the fluid from the patient. Now, few people suggested to lower the amount of fluid just half, 150 ml or even low, 100 ml. That is called mini fluid challenge test. The change in the stroke volume is very small, therefore very precise and highly sensitive cardiac output monitors such as the pulse contour analysis, which can detect the changes in cardiac output as low as 1.3%, may be more suitable for the mini fluid challenge. Therefore, scientists devised another set of fluid responsiveness testing where one can see the change in stroke volume without giving the external fluid. These tests are basically fluid independent tests. These can be classified into three types further. 1. Passive leg raising test. 2. The test using the heart-lung interactions. And third category is the end expiratory occlusion test. We will discuss these categories one by one. So the first category of fluid independent test is PLR testing, that is passive leg raising test, in which the patient's position on the couch is changed from the semi-recumbent position at 30 to 45 degree to a position in which the trunk is horizontal and the lower limbs raised at 30 to 45 degree. A portion of venous blood is in the lower limb is transferred to the heart chamber, and that result increase in the venous return and increase in the cardiac preload, and that mimics the fluid challenge, and that you can see the internal fluid challenge or auto fluid challenge, which is very reversible. However, the PLR test has major advantage of being reversible when the patient is returned to the initial semi-recumbent position. The threshold for increasing cardiac output used for positivity is 10% here. The latest version of the Surviving Sepsis campaign recommends to use the PLR for guiding the fluid therapy in patients with septic shock. Rather than performing the test by lifting manually lower limbs holding the heels of patient, it is better to use the automatic movements of the electric bed. This prevents the possible pain for creating the pulse positive test. The maximum value of cardiac output or stroke volume, which generally appears in less than a minute, is noted, and the percentage increase is compared to the value measured before the test is calculated. After the test, it must be checked that the cardiac output or stroke volume return to its baseline value when the patient has been returned to the semi-recumbent position, and this makes sure that the baseline value considered was indeed stable. Various techniques to estimate the changes in stroke volume have been used in PLR. like pulmonary or transpulmonary thermodilution method, pulse wave contour analysis, change in LVOT or VTI using TTE, bioreactance changes, carotid or femoral flow measured by arterial Doppler, capnography. PLR test has some limitations. The test is contraindicated in case of intracranial hypertension. Intra-abdominal hypertension compresses the splanchnic territory, probably hinders the blood transfer from the lower limbs to the thorax, and certainly reduces the splanchnic blood volume that can be mobilized by the maneuver. The test is not feasible in prone positioning patients. In operative settings, it may not be feasible again. These tests can be used only in case of regular mechanical ventilation with no spontaneous cycle of respiration. The stroke volume variation occurs due to intrathoracic pressure induced variation in the right atrial pressure, changing the intrathoracic blood volume over the ventilatory cycle. In brief, the idea behind is that the more the stroke volume changes during the mechanical ventilation cycle, the more likely the patient's heart is preload responsive. The pulse pressure is a surrogate of stroke volume. The pulse pressure variation could reliably predict the fluid responsiveness in mechanically ventilated patients with septic shock with a threshold value of 13%. PPV is unreliable in cases of open chest conditions, spontaneous breathing activity, low tidal volume ventilation, or high frequency ventilation, cardiac arrhythmias, intra-abdominal hypertension, and in cases of low lung compliance. These limitations contribute to extend a zone of uncertainty of PPV that is called gray zone, where values between 9% and 13% can be associated with fluid responsiveness as well as the fluid unresponsiveness. A new fluid responsiveness test called the tidal volume challenge has been proposed by Dr. Mayatra et al. From TMH Mumbai, India. This test can be done in patients with low lung compliance, such as in ARDS patients. An increase of the tidal volume from 6 to 8 ml per kg for 1 minute to enhance the baseline variability of the dynamic indices of fluid responsiveness. Thus, using a tidal volume challenge might overcome the limitations of PPV as a predictive index of fluid responsiveness during low tidal volume ventilation in ARDS. The respiratory variations of inferior vena cava diameter have been reported to reliably predict the fluid responsiveness in ventilated patients. The AUC was 0.84 according to one meta-analysis by Zhang et al. Pooling 8 studies involving 235 patients. The cutoff values of 12% by using maximum minus minimum upon mean for IVC distensibility index, while measuring IVC M mode is kept approximately 2 cm from the junction with the right atrium and usually upstream to the superior hepatic vein inlet. The respiratory variation of IVC diameter suffers from most of the limitations of PPV and SVV. Unlike PPV or SVV, the respiratory variations of IVC diameter can be used in patients with cardiac arrhythmia. So this is the advantage. Now we move on to the last category of the fluid independent test, which is end expiratory occlusion test, where the expiratory hold is performed for about 15 seconds, and this maneuver prevents the cyclical decrease in the venous return and the cardiac preload, which increase transiently. This preload challenge results in a significant increase in the cardiac output if the patient's heart is fully responsive. Increase in the cardiac output more than 5% during EEOT could be used to reliably predict the fluid responsiveness in patients who are critically ill, including the patients with the cardiac arrhythmia and spontaneous breathing, which is an advantage over the other test. Because the cutoff is just 5%, so we require a precise cardiac output monitor, and also we require accuracy. The two main limitations of EEOT are that it cannot be used in the non-intubated patients and also it cannot be used in patients who cannot interrupt the breath for more than 15 seconds. How to use the concept of fluid responsiveness at bedside. Patients should be in acute circulatory failure with signs of hypoperfusion to initiate fluid administration. Now, if patient has obvious signs of hypovolemia such as ongoing blood loss, diabetic ketoacidosis, or severe diarrhea or initial stage of septic shock, there is no need of performing fluid responsiveness testing and start the fluid administration straight away. But in other cases, you may have to perform the fluid responsiveness testing. Now look at the situations such as the cardiac arrhythmia, spontaneous breathing, ARDS, where heart-lung interactions testing may not be very reliable. In such condition, EEOT, that is end expiratory occlusion test, may be better. In case of poor lung compliance, tidal volume challenge can be performed, which is more reliable. Now in conclusion, no FR test is perfect, having absolute sensitivity and specificity. It tells yes or no for the fluid responsiveness questioning. Now the question is, what about a patient who has 14% of PPV, and what about a patient who has the 16% of PPV? So here I conclude my lecture presentation, and I hope that you get few important thoughtful points for your exams if you are a student, and for your practice if you are a consultant already working in ICU. So thanks a lot. Subscribe to my channel to encourage me make more contents like this in critical care medicine. Thank you so much.